Okay, I need you to imagine something for a second. You're holding a single crumpled dollar bill. That's it. That's your entire net worth. You can't buy a coffee with it. You can't buy a candy bar with it. In most cities, you can't even buy a bus ticket with it. Now, what if I told you that this exact same dollar, this one boring, forgettable piece of paper, could turn into $1 million? Not through winning the lottery, not through some sketchy crypto coin your cousin texted you about at 2 a.m., through something so simple, so quiet, that most people walk past it every single day of their lives without ever noticing it. And here's the part that's going to bother you. The trick has been sitting in plain sight for hundreds of years. Einstein, yes, that Einstein, allegedly called it the most powerful force in the universe. Not gravity, not nuclear energy. This. So why doesn't everyone use it? Why are so many people broke while this secret sits right there, free for anyone to use? Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at your bank account completely differently. Let's start with the problem. And the problem is this. Your brain is bad at math. Not insulting you bad. Every single human brain bad. Our brains evolved to understand things that grow in a straight line. If you walk 10 steps, then 10 more steps, you've walked 20 steps. Simple, predictable. Your brain loves that. But money that grows through interest doesn't walk in a straight line. It grows in a curve. And your brain, the same brain that can recognize a face in a crowd of 10,000 people, is almost completely blind to curves. This isn't a personal failure. It's a wiring issue every human on Earth shares. So why was this such a huge challenge? Because for most of history, nobody needed to think about slow growth. If you were a farmer 300 years ago, you cared about this season's harvest, not what your grandkids' might have. Thinking in decades, let alone centuries, just wasn't how people were built to plan. And that's exactly where the trap is hiding. Here's a simple version of the idea. Let's say you put your $1 somewhere that grows it by 10% a year. After year one, you don't have $1 anymore. You have $1.10. Underwhelming, right? Almost insulting. But here's the twist, and this is where most people's brains switch off, which is exactly the mistake we're about to talk about. Next year, you're not earning 10% on your original dollar. You're earning 10% on $1.10, then 10% on that new number, then 10% on that one. You're not just growing your money, you're growing your growth. Picture a snowball at the top of a hill. In the first few seconds, it's just a snowball. Kind of pathetic, honestly. You could kick it and it wouldn't do much. But it keeps rolling, and every layer of snow it picks up makes it a little bigger, which means it picks up even more snow the next second, which makes it bigger still. For a long time, and I mean a genuinely long, boring time, that snowball just looks like a snowball. This is the part nobody talks about. The beginning of compound growth is almost embarrassingly slow. If you'd invested that first dollar and checked on it 10 years later expecting to be rich, you'd feel like you got scammed. But this wasn't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that most people quit right before the good part happens. They plant the seed, water it for 2 weeks, see a tiny sprout, and go, well, this clearly isn't working, and rip it out of the ground. Meanwhile, the version of them who waited is about to watch that thing explode. So how did humans figure this out and actually use it? The real answer isn't some genius insight. It's time. Just obscene, patient amounts of time paired with never touching the pile. Let's fast forward. Say that same dollar keeps growing at around 10% a year, which is, by the way, the long-term historical average of the stock market, not some fantasy number I made up for the video. After 25 years, your dollar is worth about $11. Kind of funny, right? You waited a quarter century for 10 extra bucks. After 50 years, it's around $117. After 75 years, it's crossed $1,000. And here's the part that breaks people's brains. After about 145 years, that single dollar crosses $1 million. I know what you're thinking. 145 years? I'll be dead. My grandkids will be dead. This is useless to me. And that's the twist nobody explains properly. You don't need $1. You need way more than a dollar, obviously, but you don't need 145 years either. The math works exactly the same whether you start with $1 or $10,000. It's the same curve, just shifted. Someone who invests a few $1,000s in their 20s and simply leaves it alone can absolutely cross $1 million within their own lifetime, without ever adding another cent. Not because they're a genius, because they gave the snowball enough hill. So here's a surprising fact that usually shocks people. If two people both retire millionaires, one who started investing at 25 and one who started at 35, just 10 years later, the person who started at 25 often ends up with roughly double the money, even if the older starter puts in way more cash overall. 10 years at the beginning is worth more than decades of extra deposits at the end. The early snowball just has too much of a head start. Things get even stranger when you realize this isn't really about being smart with money. It's about being patient with boredom, which honestly might be harder. So what do modern people get wrong? Almost everyone makes the same mistake, and it's not overspending. It's impatience mixed with panic. People check their investments constantly, like poking a plant every hour to see if it's grown. Growth that's invisible day to day feels like no growth at all, so people pull their money out right as the curve is about to bend upward. They kill the snowball halfway down the hill. The other mistake is thinking you need some secret formula, some insider stock tip, some genius strategy. The real reason people don't reach $1 million usually has nothing to do with intelligence. It's consistency and time getting sabotaged by fear, boredom, or impatience. There's also this myth that you need to already be rich to make this work. But the entire point of compounding is that it doesn't care how small the start is. A single dollar and $1 billion follow the exact same curve. The billionaire just skipped the boring part at the beginning because they started further up the hill. So here's the big lesson, and I want you to actually sit with this one. Compound growth doesn't reward the smartest people. It doesn't even really reward the richest people. It rewards the most patient people. The ones who can tolerate looking for a long, uncomfortable stretch of time like absolutely nothing is happening. That $1 spends most of its life looking pathetic, boring, almost not worth mentioning. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, near the very end, it explodes. Which means the real question isn't, how do I get rich fast? It's what small thing am I underestimating right now because it looks too slow to matter? Maybe it's money. Maybe it's a skill you're building 10 minutes a day. Maybe it's a relationship, or a habit, or a book you're writing one paragraph at a time. Somewhere out there, a version of you is standing at the top of a hill holding a snowball, wondering if it's even worth pushing. Push it anyway. Because the dollar in your pocket right now looks completely unremarkable. And that's exactly what $1 million looks like at the very beginning, before anyone was patient enough to watch it grow.